Pollinate Impact is a member-led network of impact incubators and accelerators in the Global South. We empower and resource incubators and accelerators so that they can effectively support their entrepreneurs in solving the biggest challenges facing people and the planet. And so we do this, this year our three priorities or our three focus areas have been access to finance, talent for ESOs, and shared tools and resources. So all of these with the perspective of ESOs, right? And so if you haven't really, haven't yet visited our website or followed us on LinkedIn to kind of get a know of our activities or what we offer in these three focus areas, please do visit our website. My colleague Anandita will share a link to our website. So today's topic is, and so this session, no nonsense advice, is part of our peer sharing, the shared tools and resources focus area. So the topic for today is empowering disability innovation through inclusive entrepreneurship, and we are delighted to be joined by three fabulous people. We have Bernard Chira, we have Prateek Madhav, and we have Boravin Ket, who are all doing extensive work in this space. They're from, and in that order, Bernard is from Innovate Now in Kenya. We have Prateek Madhav from Assistive Foundation in India. And we have Boravin Ket from Agile DG in Cambodia. And so they are here to share their experiences in supporting entrepreneurs in this field. And hopefully, it's something that you will appreciate and you'll learn from their experiences. And, in the Q&A section, we hope to hear from you all as well as to what kind of work you are doing in the space. So I know you're all eager to jump in, but if you have joined any of our sessions before, and if it's your first, it's a good surprise. So we do start all our sessions with a check-in round, right? And it's kind of our warm-up. And to kind of get a feel for, who's in the room, where you're coming from, and, to kind of level set. So we will be sharing a Menti poll link in the chat. Our lovely panelists, you're welcome to participate as well. Anandita, will you be sharing the code in the chat, please? So please go to menti.com in your browser window, or maybe on your phone. You can go to menti.com and type in the code that you see on your screen, which is 72319769, or you can directly click the link that Anandita has put in the chat. So let me talk about this first question. So the aim of this, the objective of this question is to kind of understand, right, what are the types of entrepreneurs that you're supporting in the, in your inclusive program support. So whether it is, rural entrepreneurs, are you being inclusive of rural entrepreneurs? Are you being inclusive of maybe minority entrepreneurs, or migrant, or women, or youth, right? So what kinds of entrepreneurs are you working with when you're running your, or maybe you have inclusive programs that you're running, or if you're not, and if you're here to listen, that's fine too. You can just let us know that you're just here to listen, and that's perfectly fine. Youth-led enterprises, social entrepreneurs, wonderful, assistive founders, edtech founders. So we have a good range, good diversity of folks in the room. Indigenous people, lovely. Student entrepreneurs, that's great. All right. So we have a great mix in the room. That's awesome. Women with disabilities. Okay, great. All right, so let's move on. Let's keep moving. We have a bunch of these questions to go through and kind of wake everybody up. So what are some strategies? You mentioned, these various types of entrepreneurs that you are supporting. So what have been your strategies to support these? How have you supported them? Maybe there were your tips and tricks or your strategies in supporting, say, women-led entrepreneurs or indigenous people, right? What have been your some of your strategies? It's an open-ended question, and please take the time to type it out. For people who might just be joining us, we are still doing our check-in poll. We are on menti.com. And so if you open menti.com on your browser and type in 72319769, and we're just getting started. So we're talking about what are some strategies that you have utilized or that have worked for you in your inclusive programs. Youth-friendly and gender-responsive financing approaches. Yeah. Or maybe you're here to listen to, what has worked for Bernard or for Prateek or Ravin, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe we'll give it another 30 seconds to see if, it's a sentence, so it takes a while to type. So we'll give it another 30 seconds. And I promise the next one is not going to be so heavy. All right, so let's move on. In case you think of something, oh, there it is. Providing organizational capacity, strengthening opportunities. Yep. Yeah. All right, so let's keep moving. Yeah, so let us know what country you're joining us from, or if you want to type in a city and a country. We want to know where you're joining us from. Pollinate Impact's focus is the Global South. So we are, our member base is from Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. And we just like to know where you're joining us from. Not sure if you're not able to. Oh, there you go. Nigeria. Philippines. I know Bernard is from Kenya. Raven is from Cambodia. Prateek is from India. And I see Cote d'Ivoire. I see. There you go. All right. Yeah, if you're having trouble with Menti, feel free to, type your response in the chat. That's totally fine. I don't want to stress you out with Menti. Ghana, all right. So we have West Africa on the map. All right. Awesome, awesome. All right, so then let's keep moving. Again, our focus as Pollinate Impact is our member base is really incubators and accelerators from the Global South, but we do, we can't really operate in a silo. So we do have, partners in the form of, donors, funders, entrepreneurs, right, other university academic institutions. So we just want to know what organization you identify as. And I see a lot of incubators and accelerators, and that's good because that's really, our session is really, geared towards incubators and accelerators. So that's good to hear. All right, so now let's move to our next and last question, and that's really to kind of set the stage for our peers or panelists or peer panelists, as you can call them, right? As to if you are supporting disability innovation or entrepreneurs with disability, what have been some challenges that you have encountered? And And if that is too specific for you, but you have other challenges, which are kind of similar, right? Even though you're not supporting this particular subset of entrepreneurs, we'd love to hear that as well. But I'm just going to. All right. Discrimination. It's really big. Misconception. Okay. Yeah, the perception of what it means. Yeah, the financials. All right. Yeah, and I think this kind of helps Bernard and Prateek and Ravin to kind of touch upon maybe some of these or all of these, right? When you're sharing to kind of help with how you have dealt with this, and have you observed this or felt this in your work. So with that, I think, yeah, first of all, thank you all for sharing and for participating in the check-in. And I'd like to at this point jump into the session. Maybe we can go around with one round of introductions just to see who our peer panelists are, and then we'll go one by one and learn from them about their experiences. So I'd like to invite Bernard, if you could please share a little bit about yourself and Innovate Now, maybe 60 seconds to do that.
All right. So thank you so much, Shami. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. So my name is Bernard Chira, and I am from Kenya. And I do identify as a person with a disability, a physical disability. I'm the director of an accelerator program called Innovate Now, that was launched 4 years, almost 5 years now. And it's a pioneering assistive technology accelerator in Africa. And what we've been doing over these years is creating an inclusive innovation ecosystem and providing a platform for assistive technology startups to build solutions for the African market. Innovate Now is a project that came out of a bigger project called 80-20-30, led by the Global Disability Innovation Hub. And over the years, what we've done is created resources like education, curriculum, mentoring, and tested these resources and tools to create all-round support for entrepreneurs in this sector. And we've worked with 45 startups across Africa and the world, helping them to move from validation to launch, and some of them to scale their assistive technology ventures. So that's the background of my work, and I'm happy to share more as we go on. Just to mention that this year we did incorporate in Kenya as well, and we are now focused on extending the work of Innovate Now and driving disability innovation in Africa into the future, and our new vision through 84D, which is the Assistive Technologies for Disability Trust. So happy to be here and to share insights, hopefully to inspire you and share something around disability that will help you see the opportunities and how to go about the challenges that you might be facing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Bernard. Prateek?
Thank you, Bernard. So my name is Prateek Madhav. I'm joining you today from Bangalore, which is known as Startup Capital of India. My personal introduction, I worked for 20 years in corporate organizations, and last 15 years, I also have been interested in seeing how technology can help people with disabilities and create larger scalable impact, because as all of us believe in that technology doesn't discriminate, and it also has a potential as a force multiplier. So that's with that belief we established Assistive Foundation, which is a nonprofit based out of here. 6 years back, we think of ATF as an impact organization. So we think of us as an ecosystem enabler, and hence our attempt has been in India is to create the largest ecosystem which supports technology innovators, entrepreneurs, to help build technology solutions for people with disabilities and seniors and elders as well. And within disability, our focus is not just on the born disabilities, but the acquired disabilities, also the temporary disability segment. And like I said, a lot of great solutions coming in for seniors and elders as well. As I speak to you today, we are very, very happy that we are able to create very large ecosystem in India, where we are now, we have a network around 450 innovators and startups in the country. And these are the tech innovators who are building solutions for all kinds of disabilities, so visual impairment, speech and hearing impairment, physical mobility impairment, and a lot of solutions coming in for the invisible disability segment as well. So as world is embracing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all the cool technologies which is impacting and helping us in many, many ways, we are also trying to leverage all the same cool tech to see how we can use those innovations to help people with disability and elders. The last couple of points, we also have tremendous interest in building a global community. And in fact, with Bernard Innovate Now, 6 countries, including Kenya, Bernard from Kenya, and ATF from India, we have also established a global network called Plus N, where we have access to at least 1,200 tech innovators and startups in the world. Our interest is to see how we can peer learn and help each other, as we build these large ecosystem in each of our country. There's a lot of opportunity to collaborate. But I'll end with thanking Pollinate Impact team for organizing this session. We are here to learn. We are here to share what we have done, as best practices with you folks. But back to you, Shami, and thank you very much again for the invitation.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Prateek. And last but not least, Ravin, I also would like to, Khim sends her regrets. She was slated to join from, she's a colleague of Ravin, but unfortunately her child is sick. So wish him the speedy recovery, and but Ravin will help us cover both grounds representing Agile DG. So over to you, Ravin.
Thank you very much, Shami. Thank you to your team and you for putting this together. My name is Ravin, and I'm the program coordinator at Agile Development Group. I'm joining you here from Cambodia, and also the Buddhi Tree Entrepreneurship Center lead as well at Agile Development Group. So the work that we do at Agile is to create an environment or a society where it's disability inclusive, where people with disabilities can be independent, whether that's economically or socially. So through that, we have started since 2012 from making prosthetic hands and legs, and then also switched to designing accessible tuk-tuk. And then we now switch to programs oriented. So we train women with disabilities on entrepreneurship through our incubators and accelerator programs at the Booty Tree Center. And we have worked with over 300 women, and we have established network with women entrepreneurs with disability throughout different parts of Cambodia. Another part that we do is the advocacy of disability. So we worked with national level, whether that's relevant government sectors, policymakers, international and local NGO and CSO to, mainstreaming disabilities through providing disability inclusions training to private company or NGOs through creating inclusive guidelines so that these organizations can implement disability inclusion practices in their own companies. And also, we also do other consulting works, such as, research on social health protection for people with disabilities. So these are the work that we do at Agile. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome all three of you, and welcome again to everyone who's joining us. So let's start with Bernard, right? I'll give the floor to you. So maybe you can share with us, a little bit of the context in which you're working, and how you've approached supporting disability innovation, assistive technology, and then what are some challenges that you've encountered. Have you encountered the challenges that our audience shared in the poll, and how have you addressed maybe your learnings? Yeah, so just take us through that, please.
All right. So thank you so much. So I'll take the next 12 minutes to try and share some context, experiences, and some of the work that we are doing to drive disability innovation across Africa. So a little bit of context here. So the work that we do is primarily focused on Africa, starting in East Africa here in Kenya, but really with the idea of building a disability innovation model that can be replicated across any African market. And we kind of focus also on the area of assistive technology. It is an area of key focus, and we've been trying to address what we call the gap in access to assistive technology, and also just to give some context on why this is important. So lack of access to assistive tech is one of the priority areas of intervention that has been identified by the World Health Organization and other key players, because in most of developing countries, those who need assistive technologies do not have access to them. And that could be because of a number of interplaying factors. And then for us, the strategy that we take, because there could be different ways to increase that access. But since we are based in Kenya and in East Africa, where technology adoption is quite high and there has been groundbreaking innovations coming from Kenya, we've really been trying to see how we can promote innovation where founders and startups can actually be supported to help address some of the challenges around access to assistive tech. And this could be things to do with building products that are more appropriate for our markets in terms of quality, affordability, and accessibility. So we've been basically providing support to these founders by making sure that they understand the context of AT entrepreneurship and some of the challenges as an entrepreneur to maneuver in that space. Some context also around disability in Africa, and I think this is very common in most developing countries, is that there is a huge kind of charity legacy in the area of disability. And while this is good, and while charities try to support or provide help in a neglected area, what we tend to find is that they are not able to meet the need, and sometimes charities also do not have the expertise to understand what an appropriate assistive technology product is. And also, it's kind of created a market where people expect that assistive products should be free of charge. And I will say here that, of course, for vulnerable communities that need support, governments have a responsibility to provide or to buy this product on their behalf. But essentially, businesses that create assistive technologies are actually creating them from a market context where they do expect that there can be a willing buyer. And I feel like one of the things that has been missing in most African markets is, the entire assistive technology industry or value chain is not built, is not robust, and there are opportunities across manufacturing, distribution, marketing, and also providing better product experiences. So the strategy that we take is accelerating entrepreneurs that are trying to address this needs. And it's been quite a journey, I would say, because we started this as a project, a moonshot. We were trying to see, would acceleration really work? What do entrepreneurs really need? And how do you build the ecosystem? And some of the barriers we've seen for persons with disabilities, both as entrepreneurs or also as consumers, is the idea of access to financing. So when it comes to access to funding for startups, as it were, early stage innovation capital in Africa is still nascent, still developing. And so entrepreneurs with disabilities have traditionally been overlooked by capital markets because they've been seen as an issue that is of charity or government support. So this is what we are trying to change the narrative and drive capital towards persons with disabilities and also businesses that are building these solutions. And I think one of the lessons that we've learned here is for entrepreneurs building these products, they've had to learn the language of business and the language of speaking to customers so that they can show the value proposition, so that they can show why the product they're building is better than what exists in the market. And for funders, what we're trying to educate funders is why the disability market is one not to be overlooked. And just to give you some numbers here, the global demand for assistive technology is staggering. It's 2.5 billion people across the world, and it is projected to actually rise to 3.5 billion by 2050. So essentially, there's a market, but it takes innovative business models to unlock that market. So some of the, I guess, the support that we've helped our entrepreneurs with is to really think about new business models that can unlock this market. And I'm talking about looking at, for example, pay-as-you-go models, or being able to sell to big customers, so B2B business models, but at the same time help them to create a long-term B2C strategy. And one of the things that we've also learned is that if you want to build products that respond to the market, then you have to co-design and co-innovate with persons with disabilities. So having someone with disability in the team has been very impactful for some of our startups. And we always kind of try to make sure that they have the domain expertise. And one of the things we do also is to provide them the co-creation or co-innovation environment through our Live Labs program. I wanted to speak a little bit about, is disability innovation just big attention to persons with disabilities? Why? Because
Sorry, Bernard, I'm not sure if it was just me, but will you be able to repeat the last section? I think we lost you for a second.
yeah, sorry. So I will repeat. So I was saying that is disability innovation just about assistive technology? And the answer is no. And every incubator and accelerator program should actually pay big attention to the disability market. And it's simply because of what the numbers say, and also simply because disability is really a human reality that cuts across every sector, every community, and every function of society. So think about your accelerator as a business or an organization, and ask yourself, would it be a great place for somebody with a disability to work in? Or if an entrepreneur who has a disability applied to your program, would you be able to support them? So I wanted to share a few insights about how we've gone ahead to create an enabling environment for persons with disabilities. So the first thing is to change or to adopt a culture of inclusion, where you are actually conscious and make deliberate effort to make your organization disability inclusive. And this begins with, first of all, educating yourself or committing to learn about disability if you're not exposed to the sector. And the reason this is important is because once you learn to appreciate it as a part of being a human being, then it becomes easier for you to prioritize creating an inclusive environment. The second point is you could acquire a disability yourself, even if you don't have a disability, and that should not mean that you have a less better experience, or you should not be able to continue with your work in your ESO. And it's the same thinking about what would it take to provide support to, say, a founder who has visual impairment or hearing impairment. And I think this is where accessibility resources come into play. So there is a lot of free resources, I would even say today, that are meant to create or help create an accessible environment for supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities. And I'll start on the digital environment. So on the digital environment, most tools that are being developed now in the market are actually being released with accessibility features inbuilt. For example, on Zoom, you have captions. Captions help with providing accessibility to persons who have hearing impairment, but also it makes it so much easier for everybody else to follow. So learn about accessibility features in mainstream technologies and make sure that you provide them in your programming. The other is basically to learn about disability etiquette, and essentially it's being comfortable with communicating with and about persons with disabilities. And there are various free resources on this online, including from the UN have a disability etiquette guideline that is derived from the UNCRPD. which is the International Treaty for Disabilities. But the best tip here is to use a people-first language, and people-first language is basically always coming from a point of respect and putting in your mind or in your communication that you're communicating to a human being first who has a disability. I would say then also look out for the benefits of disability inclusion. It's just not a nice thing to do. It does have tremendous benefits. And for example, it's the disability community is probably the biggest source of untapped talent. So there are amazing people, talented people with disabilities waiting to be engaged. And if you become an inclusive organization, you will be able to unlock this talent both for your startups and for your organization. It's also one of the biggest markets in the world. Actually, I spoke about assistive technologies, but did you know that there is a global gap of $2 trillion that is as a result of exclusion of persons with disabilities. So the global GDP loses $2 trillion because of exclusion. So there are many resources and benefits of disability inclusion, even from a business perspective. You will be able to get more customers if you implement digital accessibility. The last tip I want to give, and by no means it's not the last one, there are many more examples, is simply make your digital environment accessible, and especially your website. So in the realm of designing websites, there is web accessibility standards that allow people with disabilities using different assistive technologies to be able to navigate and access information equally with like everybody else. So when you're designing your accessibility, your website, include in your terms of reference web accessibility. Okay, so I want to address aspects of ESOs that want to support entrepreneurs with disabilities. How do you design inclusive programs? I think I've talked about that. So lastly, what are the challenges you might face and how do you overcome them? And here I just want to give a few tips. One is disability inclusion as a culture and as a way of business. It is a journey, it's not an event. So take it as lifelong learning. And take it as incremental. So you always need to improve. There's always new technologies that make it easier for you to create an inclusive environment, both digitally and in the built environment. And then sometimes the most challenging thing is, where do you start? So just start with one. If you get an application, maybe in your next cohort of an entrepreneur who has a disability, do not shy away of admitting them because they have a disability. Make it your first case and use it to learn and to improve your programming so that your incubator or your accelerator is fully accessible in the future to many more persons with disabilities. And then I want to leave you with this thought. When you think about disability, think of it as the largest diversity segment in the world. And why do I say this? When it comes to the idea of diversity and inclusion, a lot of strides have been made in inclusion of women, inclusion of people from different races. But think of it like this: you could be a person with disability but still be a woman and still come from a racially or a minority racial or indigenous group, or you could be of a different gender orientation. So disability as an aspect of diversity actually brings everything together. And if you make efforts to create an enabling environment for persons with disabilities, for sure you will get a return on investment and discover much more opportunities. So I want to leave it at that. I probably have exceeded my 12 minutes, but I will be around for Q&A. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernard. I know at some point I forgot to keep time. I was more engrossed in listening to you. Yeah, so let's keep this moving, and Bernard, we'll surely come back to you. I'll pass it on to Prateek, and Prateek, maybe you can pick it up from where Bernard has left off, and share with us your context in which you are working, and you talk about building the ecosystem, right? So share with us some of your learnings and what challenges you faced and how you've addressed it.
Sure. Thank you, Shami, and thank you, Bernard. It was amazing to hear your experiences, and I think many congratulations to you. What you've been able to do in that region is truly inspiring for all of us. And as we partner, I'm sure there's so much to look forward to collaborate. But again, many congratulations on all the good work. Well, thank you very much, Shami, again for the invitation. So I have 4 or 5 things which I would like to cover, in the time given. First, I'd like to actually give you guys an overview on the disability as a landscape in India. Second, what are the barriers, when we think about this landscape? What we have done as an organization, Assistive Foundation, and how we are seeing the impact and what are our initiatives. And when we engage with entrepreneurs and innovators, what is our model? What's our value proposition? And the challenges, like Shami, you asked, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges which startups are facing in India and globally. But as an institution, what are our challenges? And I'm sure some of you folks will resonate with them. I'll end with a few questions which we are thinking, because as we take pride in building India's largest ecosystem and work with 450 startups, there is so much to look forward to, and there are a lot of questions and areas which we are thinking to still continue to build. So I'll end with that. So these are the 5, 6 things which I'd like to cover. As we think of India as a geography, while we're talking about, like one said, 2.5 billion people, in India, somewhere 80 to 100 million people with disabilities is the segment which we are looking at. But there are several others. If you add senior population as a target market segment, there's certainly a larger population, and there's so many barriers when we think about people with disabilities as a target segment. Obviously, you're talking about a lot of discrimination. The workplaces are very indifferent and non-accessible. There's always a fear of harassment. There's also a lot of misconception about disabilities, which we have seen in geographies like ours. And hence, it brings us to also understand that while these are the misconceptions or these are the challenges of people with disabilities in geographies like ours, we realize that they never get the opportunity to really get access to good education and healthcare. I mean, in India, 75% of people with disabilities remain employed, and rest of them also largely is the population which get employment in the very unorganized sector. Yeah. So access to education, access to healthcare, access to equal opportunity, employment is very, very poor. The literacy levels are very, very poor as well. The majority of age group, which is working life, is people with disabilities in India spend as being dependent on the disability pension and other stuff. And that doesn't bring dignity. So the way we think about ATF impact is 3 L's. We think of first L as learning, Second L is the livelihood on the employment. Third L is the living. So learning, livelihood, and living is how we see ATF's impact in the work areas. Obviously, learning is about how do you really provide accessible education and opportunities for learnings and upskilling. The livelihood is not just about employment, but can we promote a lot of people with disabilities to get into entrepreneurship as well. Um, and how do we create that whole environment where they get access to funding and stuff like that as well. And living is not just about independent mobility. The way we think about living is access to travel, access to content and the recreation which all of us have access to, and things like that. So these are the use cases. Now, like I was saying, we're very fortunate that in last 10 years, we have been able to do a lot of work to create this ecosystem and grow this ecosystem of assistive technology innovators. In fact, I think the excitement in India, and some of you might already know this, is that last 10 to 15 years, we have seen a huge excitement in the startup space, and particularly in the technology startup space as well. While in India, there were only 400 registered startups in 2014. In 10 years, we have seen that number growing to 114,000. So there's a huge upsurge in from policy and from the government. A lot of initiatives, a lot of programs, a lot of funding is being available. And I think what we have done essentially is one of the learning is to really latch on to the larger trends in the country. That always help because from policy and there is a focus. So that's one thing which we've been able to do very successfully. And hence, while we only saw few startups in the assistive technology space today, like I said, there are 450 innovators. Now, while this number is amazing in terms of the growth of assistive technology innovators and startup, what is also quite interesting in India is that a lot of these innovators and startups are not just coming from tier 1 towns. They are also from tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And hence, there is an ecosystem which we are able to promote, and help people sitting in faraway lands in India. And India is a big country, geographically as well. So we are able to promote that entrepreneurship in different, rural areas as well. The other thing which we have seen as a trend in India is that there are earlier we saw a lot of technology innovation happening in the visible disabilities, but now, like I said earlier, there are tons of good solutions coming in the non-invisible disabilities as well. So somebody is using AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to put together solutions to early detect, autism. Somebody is working using the augmented reality for better learning, for kids with autism. Obviously, there are tons of good solutions of using the computer vision, artificial intelligence for independent mobility or for people with who are blind and visually impaired as well, right? These are the few use cases. Moving on to the third topic, uh, you could take an incubation approach or you can take an acceleration approach. And let me just give you a distinction from the way we defined is, obviously incubation is 0 to 1, where you have certain ideas, certain technologies whom you want to incubate. So you are beta testing with users, trying to see if there is a need, this is a viable solution from a technology standpoint, and then trying to build a pilot or a MVP, the minimal viable product, as in the startup lingo we say it. Now, acceleration is about moving beyond one. To really, if you have tried it on 100 people, can we make it 10,000? Can we make it 100,000? And that's where we believe the challenge of assistive technology ecosystem has been, it's not that there are not good solutions, it's not that those solutions are not needed, it's not that our innovators are any less passionate about building scalable startups, but where we are failing as an country, or probably as an ecosystem world over as well, is to really scale these solutions so that these solutions are being made available to larger set of people, in the country and in the world as well. Incubation typically is a longer cycle, 12 to 18 months, but acceleration is just focused of 4.5 to 6 months program. And that's where, all hands come together to make us enterprise scale well. So think of it, ATF work and acceleration program with startup as an ecosystem work where all boats rise, in the ecosystem. And that's the kind of investment, that's the kind of work that is required to make so many startups successful. We are very, very happy to share with you that at least 75 to 80 startups today in India are revenue earning startups, and they are able to scale well, not just providing the solutions in India, but outside in some of the other countries as well. Now, why would these startups come to you? What's your value proposition? And I think today, ecosystem in India is, like I said, very vibrant. To just give you an example of the, to show you the number, India today has 110 unicorns, and which are obviously, as all of us understand, a startup company or a company which has $1 billion or more as a valuation. And a lot of these unicorns have been made in last 5 years, which essentially means that the ecosystem is helping in many ways, if not, not limited ways. But the way we think value proposition of any program, incubation and acceleration, is based on 4 pillars. One, you help entrepreneurs to give a lot of inputs on disabilities. I'm sure this world has seen so many phenomenal tech solutions which don't work and which are not needed. So I think you have to really not get emotional and give that positive feedback to those entrepreneurs. And I can tell you, most of them would appreciate that you did not elongate the journey of building a great tech solutions which was not needed in this world, or probably which was not useful. So the help on disability as a domain, disability as an expertise, disability as a different use case is so important. Finding out different monetization model is one of the biggest challenges which startups face. And if we can help them figure out the customer target, customer segment, go-to-market strategies, different monetization model. I know, Bernard, you talked about B2B and B2C as a go forward. We've also seen B2B2C working, where the first B is the startup, the second B can be the government, because government can be the largest buyer of assistive technology in any country as well. Or it can be the corporate social responsibility funding, which we are able to use. And C, obviously, is the person with disability or a special educator or a parent. But we have seen B2B2C working in larger way as well, while obviously different startups are trying to crack the B2B market or B2C market. I think one of the very important aspect which those entrepreneurs would come to you if you are able to provide value-added services. And by that, I mean, in the Indian ecosystem, the emergence of entrepreneurs who are solving problems of disabilities is very, very high, like I said. But primarily, they are tech entrepreneurs. And in city like Bangalore, earlier, we crack a joke that if you throw a stone, it is likelihood that it'll fall on a startup. So every other house, every other place is full of tech entrepreneurs. But as you try to scale these solutions as tech entrepreneurs, the tech remains or becomes only 20 to 30%. What takes over is how are you building? You're not just building tech product, you're building a brand, you're building a scalable enterprise, and hence think about distribution, think about branding, think about how you're going to manage your finances well, how are you building teams, because a lot of these tech entrepreneurs are first generation entrepreneurs, and they do not probably have an experience of building team, and forget about building the culture in the team, and hence we focus on a lot of these softer aspect as we focus on some of the harder aspect of funding and technology as well. So I think where they would ask for your help is the funding and the tech and the mentorship, probably where they do not realize they would need your help as well in building the team, hiring the right talent, building the right organization structure, building the right financial mechanisms for compliances. We had a startup who had everything but could not raise money. They had the best product, they had the best potential, they had the right team, but they just did not manage their finances well in terms of compliances. And it's not by intent. I think it's just the area where the tech entrepreneurs lack skills, and we need, if we can create a shared services in your organization to support those entrepreneurs, I think it will go a very long way in supporting them in the startup journey. Last 2 points. As we speak, funding is an issue in the assistive technology innovation ecosystem, not just for startup or organization like us. A lot of investors still think that this is charity, and this is something which none of us want to even utter or think about, and hence it is a fight between creating more and more awareness among investors who can be venture capitalists, impact investor, high net worth individuals, or any other people who are interested in this one. Distribution is an issue. Like for example, in India, 70% of people with disabilities live in rural areas, and hence you can build the best of the product. But I'm sure it might be a challenge in Africa as well, Bernard, where you can build the best of the product, but how are you going to distribute this product? And once you distribute the product, how are you going to maintain and service those products in case they're hardware products as well? I think these are the few challenges which we've seen in the ecosystem. I'll end with few questions which we are thinking. At ATF, we're thinking about how to attract more and more funding. Number one. Number two, how we can fuel also the global collaborations among different organizations. There's so much to learn from each other, and in fact, we should thank Planet Impact to create this session for the peer learning. As we are all being invited for this session, we're thinking about, as we are becoming a digital society, digital nations, digital ecosystem, we also realize that we are also creating a digital divide, and hence, how do we put smarter technologies to not that divide take shape, as we have seen the whole social divide in the last 30-40 years of our living. We are also thinking about topics like digital self-determination, giving choices to people with disabilities to make decisions on their own. We're thinking about financial inclusion of people with disabilities. We have run several initiatives in India to identify startups and technologies to see how we can promote the whole financial inclusion and the people with disabilities. But I think as we end, I'm very, very excited today to speak to all of you folks, because I think this is the world where the global collaboration, the connected intelligence, and the shared experiences can do a lot of magic. Sometimes all you have to do is to put the right people in the room, and the magic happens. And it being a virtual room, I think it applies the same. So thank you very much, Shami and Planet Impact, for inviting me. And I'm happy to take questions now or later on. But back to you, Shami.
Yeah, thank you, Prateek, and we're equally delighted that we have this opportunity to hear from you all. I just wanted to make a quick announcement. I know we are on time, but we have awesome insights from Ravin to still go through. I know we are over time, but I do hope that you all stay on. Ravin is really going to talk about, specifically in your program design, right? How do you design for inclusiveness? So please stay on. Give us another 10 minutes. This has been amazing listening to these people. I'm sorry I kind of lost track of time. So apologies, and Ravin, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Shami. And also thank you for your presentation as well, Bernard and Prateek. Before I start with the tips on how to make your incubator or accelerator programs more disability inclusive, I would like to give a highlight of the context of disability, especially in Cambodia. So according to the census, it's about 4.9%, which is about 800,000. But based on the actual evaluation, it's suspected that it could be 21%. So this is one of the biggest demographic population here in Cambodia. And so in terms of entrepreneurship landscape, you have a lot of programs that are run by a lot of ESOs, especially here in the capital city of Phnom Penh. However, if you look at the demographic of participants, you see that most of them are designed for general publics, especially for youth in college, for young people, millennials, and those startups that want to expand. However, if we look at the entrepreneurship training programs specifically for people with disabilities, I don't see many. I think we are the first to launch that. And so that's really unfortunate to see, but as we're working towards a more inclusive entrepreneurship landscape, we would like to see that implemented more. And so since we work mostly with women entrepreneurs with disabilities, we'd like to share specific aspects of women with disabilities rather than general people with disabilities. So I caught what Bernard caught my attention in terms of society viewing disabilities from a charitable perspective, which is pretty similar here in Cambodia as well, although it's gotten so much better in the last several years, but still the perception persists. If we have entrepreneurship with disabilities, doing businesses, selling products, most of the time the purchases would be, out of sympathy, which is not something that's going to be sustainable in the long run. And so in terms of this, we try to enforce our advocacy part of work to be more aware by a lot of stakeholders, policymakers, especially those private companies. So, like Bernard also shared, there are so much untapped potentials within the disability community. One thing that I've worked with them at that I've noticed is that they are very resilient and they have so much patience into what they work. So the number one barrier that put them from achieving their dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur is the lack of support in terms of fund. The financial institutions landscape here in Cambodia is not very inclusive when it comes to people with disabilities accessing to finance. There are no inclusive policies that guarantee the likelihood of people with disabilities getting loans. Even the venues are not accessible. How do you expect the policies to be accessible? So, which is why we work with a lot of financial NGOs to find out strategies and brainstorm on methods how to make it more inclusive in terms of giving out loans to people with disabilities, and social barriers as well, because those are mostly women. So it originally comes with social norms, and when you add disability into that, it becomes double. So a lot of women with disabilities have so much struggle bursting out of their bubbles, so they are not encouraged to go out of their way and achieve their dreams in being successful entrepreneurs. So in terms of us providing training and being their mentors, it takes a lot of time and effort and trust to be able to help them build their confidence. In terms of, accessible events, training venues, let's start there. These are the things that limit people with disabilities from entering a space where they can enjoy the same opportunity as everyone else. So when you have that aspect, of course, it limits a bigger part of people with disabilities freedom as well. In terms of entrepreneurship programs, you see a lot of funds giving out to entrepreneurs once they finish their program, but those are generally for general entrepreneurship programs. When it comes to entrepreneurship programs for women with disabilities or people with disabilities, they want to see impact, but they wouldn't be willing to give funds. And this is important to kickstart those entrepreneurships business. How are you gonna start a business idea when you don't have the grants, and when the financial landscape is also exclusive? So these are some of the biggest challenges that we have seen here, specifically in Cambodia. So in terms of program design, I would like to give you some tips. I divide it into 3 aspects. These would be very, not that difficult for those ESO that want to start implementing disability inclusion in their programs. And then you can, continue to build it up from there over time, because this is not a work that we finish in one day. So in terms of inclusive recruitment process, a lot of people with disabilities are excluded from opportunity to join programs because of the recruitment process or announcements not being inclusive. I mean, those entrepreneurship programs that are, widely known, they don't explicitly discriminate people with disabilities, but when you don't make it disability inclusive, that automatically leave out those people already. So, you need to define what types of disabilities you want to start with or you want to focus on, because there are different types of disability. At Agile, we are lucky to have work to cover all aspects or all types of disabilities. But when you want to start with disability inclusion, think about what type of disability you want to focus on. So the common one would be physical impairment. So you would need to allocate some resources and think of other aspects of the program that would accommodate that specific type of disability. And from our experience, it can be difficult to mix up different types of disability in one program and not define a specific one. So you would need to have a lot of resources and, difficulty in terms of accommodating all of them. So you want to start with specific type of disability. In terms of delivery method, you want to define how you're going to do your training, whether you want to do it online or in person. And that's different from a country's context. So for example, here in Cambodia, a lot of people with disabilities reside in rural areas. So internet connections can be a big challenge if you want to conduct it online. So our program, we try to deliver it in person with our team traveling directly to their locations. So this is what we were able to do with. However, if you have limited resources and can do online, make sure that those participants are guided and directed, giving instructions so that they can be in online trainings with you. And in terms of, people first language, like Bernard say, it's being respectful to those people, not using derogatory terms, make sure that the language includes everyone and also people with disability. Materials, a communication method are also what are overlooked. Of course, when you do program announcement or materials, you want to design your program to make sure that it's beautiful, it's creative, so that it would catch attention of the people who would register. However, this can limit to some people, especially people with visual impairments, or people with difficulty seeing, limited vision, color, wrong color contrast, or small fonts could be limited to them as well. Or people who cannot see and only rely on visual or subtitles. Those people you need to consider if you want to accommodate them as well. Another element that's equally important in terms of designing your program is having we call it pre-test or pre-assessment at the beginning of the program. So you want to find out what the background and the literacy level, and also struggles or special needs, reasonable accommodations that those participants would need, so that you can tailor your contents to fit the level of understanding, to make sure they join you comfortably and make sure that they can maintain their attendance throughout the program. So this is very important for you to analyze that and take into account when you actually designing the actual contents. And the second one is reasonable accommodations. Of course, these can come before the program and also during the program. So obviously, first you need to have accessible training venues. So you need to, you have that result from the pre-assessment test. So you can know exactly how many people have physical impairments, how many people have visual impairments. So you can accommodate the training venues based on those participants. Transportation facilitation as well. We at Agile, we usually go directly to their places because it doesn't require them to travel. If they have physical impairments, of course, traveling would be difficult for them, or visual impairment. So make sure you have a plan to facilitate that transportation to get to the place and back home if you plan to do it in person. Accessible materials as well. This ties back to what I mentioned earlier. If you have people with hearing impairment, you need to have sign language interpreter to help interpret what is being said. You need to have slides and documents designed that are inclusive, mostly visual. So, and doesn't limit to those with visual impairment, but those with limited literacy who cannot read can also receive information as equally as everyone else well. The last aspect that I would like to share is the training methods. This is very important because you can have the result of your pre-assessment and physical reasonable accommodations, but if the trainers fail to consider the needs of people with disabilities, it doesn't get through them. So the effort kind of go to waste. So you want to, as trainer or mentor, you want to consider the geographic location and the cultures of the people with disabilities over there. What kind of tone do they want to use? Do you have to use formal tone, informal tone? spoken language, what kind of technical terms you cannot use or above their level of understanding. So as a trainer, you need to know, you need to have a sense. For example, if you have a first training, you kind of have a sense on what's going on there. So you can adapt it at, trainings sessions later. And, background and age, we train entrepreneurs with disabilities from different range of age. So the age range can limit the acceptance rate in terms of the content as well. So this can need to be taken into account. Training delivery method, you need to define whether you want to speak more or show pictures more, or you want to personalize example as specifically as personal as possible, because you can have the most simple or basic explanations and some of them still have difficult time or trouble digesting or comprehending it. So you need to personalize it as specific as possible. We find that ongoing one-on-one coaching and mentoring helps as well, because you have one session per week. So that's not enough for the entrepreneurs to develop their business ideas. They need help consistently. So scheduling one-on-one mentoring and coaching with them, help them personalize their business ideas to be as specific, as personal to them. And so this would help them to be more successful in terms of pitching. As trainer or mentors, you need to know that you must have patience and empathy, because it can take so much effort and time trying to make sure entrepreneurs understand what's being said. So it takes some time and it takes effort. So be patient and try to understand where they're coming from and their economic situation, their family situation as well, because these external factors play into how the training content's being received. So, be more empathetic and be patient. So this, I might have gone over time, so I would like to wrap up now. These are some of the tips that I can share. Of course, I would be very happy to, if you have other questions and would like to ask more, I would be more than happy to give you answers. And again, thank you, Shami, and your team for organizing this, for putting this together. I've really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ravin. Yeah, I first of all, I have to say thank you to everyone who's still around. I totally appreciate that we have eaten into your next hour. So I will, if I'll open it up. If there are no pressing questions from the folks that are around, my proposition is that we can collect the questions and we can, get responses from Prateek and Bernard and Ravin, and get back to you. Maybe that would be best in the interest of time. But if there's anything really bugging you and you've been hanging around just to ask that question, then I will maybe invite you to pose that question. Otherwise, I think our friends will be happy to connect on LinkedIn. And, if you're okay, I can introduce you all through emails. I'm happy to do that. But I'm glad that we had this session, and, even to initiate this dialogue and this, have this platform to get a little bit more in depth into this topic. So I really appreciate all of you for joining, and especially Ravin and Prateek and Bernard for sharing your insights, your experiences. It really was very, it was for me, it was a lot of learning, and I'm sure that was the case for everybody else on the call as well. So I again thank you again for joining, and we'll keep in touch and send us your questions via email if there was still any that we weren't able to get to. Yeah, and have a good rest of the day, rest of your evening. Everyone, thank you for joining.